talk from notes, but what I want to do is kind of give you, from a Christian perspective, a little bit of the background, what we're dealing with, and trying to celebrate tonight, which we will celebrate tonight. This ceremonial Passover that we're celebrating tonight, that whole element was, the Passover was very essential to interpreting the life of Jesus and the Passover meal during Holy Week. So, a couple of things that's important for us to remember is that in the New Testament there are two traditions for the Passover meal. One tradition comes out of St. Paul, and one tradition comes out of John. Right? And the tradition from Paul obviously goes back to Jesus himself. Now remember, Paul preceded the Gospels by quite a few years. Paul wrote his first epistle in 51 AD. He had a run-in with Peter in 49. And Paul himself died in 67. So he comes out of the tradition of the Seder meal or the Passover meal in Christianity being a Seder meal. And so that's where the Matthew, Mark, and Luke follow in that tradition. John, however, does not have Jesus celebrating the Seder. Right? John has Jesus celebrating the meal the night before the Seder, the night before when they were preparing the lambs to be slaughtered. That's why John's gospel is the only gospel that refers to Jesus as the Lamb of God. So Jesus is crucified precisely in John's gospel when the lambs were being slaughtered. So Jesus celebrates the meal in John the day before the Passover. Right? Just to give you now remember too that John in his gospel does not have a traditional Last Supper scene. Okay? John does not have the institution of the Eucharist at the Last Supper. John's Eucharistic doctrine, if you will, is pretty much rooted in the 6th chapter of his Gospel. The famous scene in John's Gospel at the Last Supper was Jesus washing the feet of the disciples, which again, if you take a strong symbol, he's associating there the suffering of Jesus, what is happening at the Last Supper or the Passover, to serving one another. So again, we have those two traditions of Paul and John. Let me just read to you the scripture quote from the institution of the Lord's Supper. Now remember, in the Gospels, it was not referred to as the Last Supper. It was always referred to as the Lord's Supper. Okay? So in terms of Paul, in the first letter to Corinthians, chapter 11, it's the traditional sayings that we're used to. He says, "For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you." Now that's an extremely important element in terms of tradition. For some reason, it was necessary for Paul to make sure there was a continuity between Jesus and himself. Remember, Paul was a converted Jew, a converted Pharisee. Okay? And Paul considers himself an apostle after the conversion. So it's necessary for Paul, when he is preaching and teaching, to let people know that there is continuity between himself and Jesus, who appeared to him at his conversion. So that's why he says here, "For I received from the Lord what I also handed on to you." very important words in Paul. More important than the other words, even. That the Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took a loaf of bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, "This is my body that is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, he took the cup also after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." So that's really the first Christian account of the Last Supper. Paul writes in the early 50s, the first gospel is written somewhere between 65 and 70. So you see the tradition that is going on here. And when he speaks of the covenant, the new covenant, I just want to bring out, it's the new covenant that Jeremiah talks about in his prophecy. See if I can... the problem when you're a former teacher, you got too many papers.
There's no such thing as former teacher.
Thank you. Jeremiah. All right. So here's what they're referring to when Jesus talks about the new covenant. He's referring back to the prophecy of Jeremiah, and here's what Jeremiah has to say. "The days are surely coming, says the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah. It will not be like the covenant that I made with their ancestors when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. A covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, says the Lord. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says the Lord. I will put my law within them. I will write it on their hearts. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people." Those words, interesting too, are the words that come out of the book of Exodus when the covenant was made. "No longer shall they teach one another or say to each other, 'Know the Lord,' for they shall all know me, from the least of them to the greatest, says the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity and remember their sin no more." So that just gives you hopefully a little bit of a background that what we're doing is we're coming out of a couple of traditions of the Last Supper, the Lord's Supper. One from Paul, one from John. So, and it all obviously in the images that we use in the New Testament all will refer back to the book of Exodus and what we will be talking about tonight. So, with those few words, I thank you again for coming, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Don Russo. So, when we celebrate the Seder, what we celebrate is order. The word Seder means order. And the reason that we need order is because we are starting off as being slaves tonight. The transition is from slavery to freedom. And think of also, I'll give you a few images to digest, from narrow to wide, from vertical to horizontal, from either or to and. Okay? This is the movement that we will have this evening. So half of the Seder, the order, will be when we're still coming out of slavery, and then the second part will be we are now free and we're celebrating. So order is, think of it as we have tonight 15 steps. And those 15 steps, think about 15 steps in any, like the 12-step program, right? To get out of something into something a little healthier, better, wider, more inclusive in your life and not narrowing on your life. This is the Jewish 15-step program. Now, it's not only a Jewish program, of course. We see that it really is a human program. And our rabbis tell us that not only is this a holiday that we celebrate or go through this process, but this is an ongoing process in our lives. So when we wake up in the morning, we need order from beginning to end. Otherwise, we would stray. That is the assumption. So this is why it was important to give the Israelites this order so they can feel the sense of accomplishment and responsibility. When you're a slave, no responsibility. When you want to be a free person, full responsibility. So this is also the shift. So the first thing we do on this Seder, on page 4, we begin with, like every good thing we do in life, with sanctification.
Now notice too, the Seder book looks a little backwards perhaps. All right, you start at the back of what we would think is the back of the book. It's the front of the book, because Hebrew goes from right to left. Okay, so you turn the book over as you would normally look at it, and as Westerners look at it, we look at, first thing you see is the Seder plate. So we do have the Seder plate on the table, with each table has one Seder plate somewhere in the center. Each of you has a matzah on your plate, and then under the matzah is a small little napkin we're going to use for the hand washing. There is a bowl on each table with a water cup in the bowl. And when we get to that point, when Rabbi says we'll do that together, we'll start with the hand washing. Okay? So
for yourself, or actually the way we do it tonight, because we are training ourselves to be free people, we pour each other the cup of wine to make each other feel like they are important. So if you're sitting with a friend, a spouse, you can pour each other a glass of wine. There are carafes on the table, and then white wine. If you can choose whatever you want. I can tell you that in the Talmud is the Jewish oral tradition of the Bible, of the written Bible. There's an oral tradition, and that was the over there. When I was researching actually for tonight, the first time 18 years ago, and Father Roy asked me to help him lead a model Seder, and I was an Orthodox Jew, and I was thinking, what am I going to do, religiously, with Catholics? I thought, God will strike me. And I consulted with my rabbis, and they gave me the okay. They said, it's no problem, it's education, it's very good. So I researched it, and I realized that actually in the time of Jesus, it was still the same Seder. So what we do today, the main purpose of this event is to tell the story of the slavery and then the freedom. You start with the negative and you close with the positive. So the whole idea is to tell the story. So they told the story, and we're telling the story. We don't have to stick to the text word for word. The point is to convey the message that with the belief in God, we can accomplish pretty much anything. And on Passover, we just finished the holiday of Purim. Anybody knows Purim? Purim is the book of Esther. The book of Esther is the only book in the Bible, the Jewish Bible, and I'm sure the New Testament too, that does not mention the name of God. And originally, it was not going to be canonized. But the rabbis found a hidden message, right? The name of God is not there, but he's very present. In the month between Purim and Passover, it's all about revealing the hand of God. Because by Passover, when we get to Passover, the whole story is about the hand of God rescuing the Hebrews. The idea that we couldn't do it ourselves. It's so essential to any of the Jewish theology for sure, Christian theology. It's about God coming to save us. Right? So we do share that idea. So God was good to us, and now our journey is to end up being good to other people. That is the journey. But for that, you have to open up. You have to go from Egypt. The word Egypt in Hebrew means narrow. So you come out of the narrow straits, and the very interesting idea that I know it's very sensitive to talk about the temple these days, but in the Jewish sources, the third temple is called Rehoboth. Rehoboth means wide. So the journey, the blueprint of a spiritual journey is going from narrow to wide. So leaving Egypt is not just leaving a physical, specific place 3,500 years ago. It is an ongoing process that we have to engage in from the minute we open our eyes. The first thing we say as observant Jews is, I am thankful. This is the first thing. Modeh ani. Thankful I am. The word I am actually is after thankful. In Hebrew grammar, you're supposed to say, I am thankful. But because we don't want the first thing that comes out of your mouth is I, but thank you, this is the idea. Passover is the beginning of the Jewish people. The Paschal Lamb, is the quintessential offering. It is a thanksgiving offering. How do we know that it's a thanksgiving offering and not a burnt offering? The burnt offering goes in smoke to God. We don't enjoy it at all. We don't benefit from it. Thanksgiving is the opposite. We enjoy the family eating together, the friends sitting together, and that's what Passover is about. And finishing this idea from narrow to wide, only when you sit with other people around the table, you open up. And that is the process. Being kind to other people at the end behooves us to really practice, like the gym, how to open up and not close in ourselves. So this is the journey of being from slavery to freedom. And last thing, we cannot be free by ourselves. We have to have a community. So whatever the community is, this is the beginning of a community. The commandment was to take the lamb from Egypt, the Egyptian lamb that was a symbol, that was a god in Egypt, to take it 4 days before they slaughtered it. They took it on a Sabbath, on the Shabbat, and 4 days later, they slaughtered it. They showed the Egyptians and to themselves that this is their trajectory. Their trajectory, even if they don't succeed, but this is the mindset. And this is what we do on Passover. We come together, we strengthen each other, and we go from there. Okay, I promise you that by 8 o'clock you'll eat dinner. But we will be munching all along. So this is an hour and a half of appetizers to the mind and to the body. So we start with the first step. And by the way, the prayer book, the Jewish prayer book, is called a Sidur. Same word, of order, because it gives us the order from when we wake up until we go to sleep. So let's raise the cup, the first cup. We will have 4 cups this evening. And again, you don't have to, I never do it. You have to, maybe some of you can, I can't. I drink a little bit, then I, of course, fill it up again. 4 cups are for the theme of 4. So the steps are 15 steps, but there's a theme of 4 in this evening, and we will mention them as we go. The 4 that we start with are the cups of wine, and each cup of wine commemorates God's, and we'll read it as we bless. It's called a language of freedom. There are 4 words that God used in the Bible to say that He will rescue the Jewish people. So it says, I will find you, I will free you, I will take you, and I will bring you. So those 4 steps, right, are commemorated with the glass of wine. So the first one, on page, as we said, 4, and we can say it together. Sorry, I go by the Hebrew side, but yes, page 5. And again, we can say it together. We'll just do the first 2 paragraphs, 3 paragraphs. Okay, and it was evening and it was morning the 6th day, that the heavens and the earth were finished together with the divine, this is for Shabbat. We're not doing it. What I wanted to show you here is that the Jewish day begins with the evening, because of this phrase in the Torah. So let's begin with the second blessing, and where it says blessed. Blessed are you, our God, monarch of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine. Don't drink yet. Blessed are you, O eternal, our God, monarch of the universe, who selected us from among all people and raised us among nations and sanctified us with divine commandments. And you, our God, have given us festivals, days of joy, this feast of the matzahs, this time of our freedom, in remembrance of the departure from Egypt, for you have selected and sanctified us from among all nations, in that you cause us to inherit your holy festival days. Blessed are you, God, who sanctified Israel and the festival days. And then actually, let's read the next paragraph, just because it has the first language of freedom. On the bottom, festival, yes. On the bottom, let's just read the bottom paragraph. Blessed are you, our God, monarch of the universe, who has preserved us alive, sustained us, and brought us to this joyous season. Now you drink. I didn't want to read this whole paragraph, but this is the first cup of the sanctification. The next step, so step 1, we already accomplished something. 7, page 6 and 7. We wash our hands, just like anything else before we serving God. We have to come in a state of purity. And the word for washing our hands in Hebrew is actually the same word as elevating our hands. So it's not just washing our hands for cleanliness. It really is to elevate what we do with our hands. So, again, always have in mind, we are slaves. So think of slaves. They wash their hands before they eat. No, if they give them a little something while they build the pyramid, they're thankful, right? There's no purpose. And right now I'm actually writing about the Jews from Arab countries, lest the world continue to think that Jews are only European, but what I see there, that there's culture where certain cultures that my ancestors came from, there is an idea of subjugation. Like if you're not from a certain religion, then you are a dhimmi. So in my family, they lived in Yemen. And so Jews and Christians in Yemen were dhimmi. They were kind of a second-class citizens. But what's important about this is that when you are like that, or slaves, think of the American slave, the African slave that came to America. The first thing that was erased for them was their history. And every empire that ever wanted to control any other nation always uprooted them and switched around. So you're not really connected to your roots. So what we do here, we sanctify and we connect and we give meaning to everything we do in life. So we now wash our hands, and the way we do it, do they have it on? Yes, you have. Okay, you explain that.
So we have a bowl of water, a bowl and a cup of water in the bowl. You can wash just the tips of your fingers, and then there is a small napkin under the matzah, and you can use that to dry and wash your hands. Go around, just pass it to each other, and you can ritually wash your hands. We do this at the Mass, of course. We wash the hands of priests. It's a penitential action also. And also, this is also where Jesus could have washed the feet of the apostles at the Last Supper. Gadi's not going to do that tonight. But there is an interesting connection to the institution of the Levitical priesthood, the Jewish priesthood. So when Moses and Aaron were doing the first Passover, they washed the feet also of the Levites to begin their action as Levitical priests. So perhaps that was what was going on there.
And so we wash our hands, and this time without a blessing. Next time it will be with a blessing. So I'll introduce already now the idea of the washing. We wash twice tonight, and one of the signs of being a free person is that you have the ability to access washing. We take it for granted, but when my parents walked for a year through the Arabian desert as children, people died of thirst. So, let alone washing and doing all these. So we wash our hands for the first time. The next thing is we take the parsley, and you should have take a piece of parsley. Okay. So you have cups with what seems to be a little bit of water. Don't drink it. It's unless you really, really love salty water. This water represents our slavery, our misery, and we dip the parsley in it once, twice, and we hold it and we say the first blessing over food. So, and you can keep eating the parsley if you like. We say, "Blessed are you, our God, monarch of the universe, creator of the fruits of the earth." Eat it.
I made it extra salty so that it does commemorate the tears of the Israelites as they went through their slavery, the salt of their tears. We remember that now. So we eat the parsley. You can have whatever more that you like, or save it for a little bit later. But
Okay, so we do this to just kind of clean our palate. but also to just to start kind of the process. I'm sure they were thinking about the same thing. People are around the table that want to eat.
Sorry, I slipped my mind there. Of course, this is the dipping. You might remember in the Gospels where Jesus dips. He said, "Who is the one to betray me?" The one that dips the morsel. So this could be that spot where that takes place.
Can you hear in the back? Okay, good. The next thing is yachatz. Yachatz is to break the matzah in the middle. So each table would have, you have a central plate, right? The matzahs are in the center, and that plate too, Donna, that you have.
Okay.
You have one plate with vegetables and the egg, and one plate with matzahs. So we need a designated person in each table. And I think the Jewish lawyer table would have an issue with, they'll have to deliberate first. So take 3 matzahs, and Father Roy has a nice teaching about this, so I'm going to let him do that.
Okay, so this is the first blessing on the bread. There's you'll see in the bread. We don't eat it yet, okay? But we take 3. They always serve 3 matzahs. So the leader, whoever at your table, is holding the 3 matzahs now. The middle one is taken out. Now, of course, when I see 3, I think of Trinity. And it's interesting that it's the middle one that is taken out. Right, you do the gesture. So the middle one is taken out. It is broken in half. Try to get it to be a half. The middle one. Break it in half.
Now, it has to be exactly half.
Try to be exactly half. Now, the middle, the biggest one, the
Bigger part.
is when you wrap it.
Yeah.
Okay, now on the basket where the bread was, there was 1 napkin. That big piece of matzah gets wrapped in the white linen. Now for Christians, I mean, when I saw this immediately, I thought of the body of the Lord wrapped in linen. Now this is put away to the end of the meal. So just put it aside, wrap it with the big napkin, with that 1 napkin. Wrap it and put it away. Just hide it somewhere on the table. Normally in the household, the parents would hide this. This is called the epikomen. The epikomen that is hidden, and later on in the night, the kids go look for it. And whoever finds it gets some kind of a prize. Okay? So the bread is broken. Now, if everybody can look at your own matzah for a moment, notice that matzahs are always pierced. It has to be pierced so that it cooks through quickly. You can see through it a little bit. You can see the light if you hold it up. You'll see that it's pierced. This is so that it won't get leavenized, it won't leaven, it won't rise, okay? So it stays very dry. But it's amazing to me when you hear the psalm, by his wounds, by his he was pierced for our transgressions. And then the way it just sort of does cook, it's amazing there that it's striped. By his wounds we are healed. So the matzah itself is kind of seeing, you see into the matzah. This is what is used, at every Seder, and then there's at the Last Supper. So the first piece is broken, and the bigger piece is wrapped in a linen napkin. It's put away till later, and now the blessing comes on the other piece.
Yeah. So we then put back the smaller piece in between the 2 matzahs. Put it back. Just put it back. And why do we put the big one and the small one? First of all, and just the lesson right there of breaking bread, that if you want to be friends with people and break bread, you will know that your peace will never be like theirs. And that's part of expanding your horizons, not to look at people through a very narrow lens to say, oh, they have more of that in their life. Well, but you don't know their whole story, right? So just to accept it. So we are now still poor. We're still the slaves that come out of Egypt. So we store our food for later. The whole time in the desert for 40 years, the training of the Israelites would be not to save the bigger portion for later. I know we do that and we have savings and it's great. But the idea of the manna, the word manna comes from the word emunah, to believe, to have faith. Which means it's the same root as amen. You know, when you say amen, same word. So the idea is that only the hand of God, right, the hidden hand of God that reveals itself, is our salvation at the end of the day. So we have to train that to just in the prayer of our Father, right? Give us today our daily bread. So this is faith. This is the essence of faith. Give me today, which means that if you see a poor person on the street and you have one, I'm not talking about New York City, that's a whole different idea. But let's say you have somebody and and they don't have much, and you share with them, and you think to yourself, but if I give them half of my matzah, I'm going to only have half left. Yes, but God tells you, you can't see the rest of the package. So this is, you share, you believe. So this is what we keep the larger piece for later, and we eat the small one. But yet we have 2 more matzahs, and the 2 more matzahs represent the double portion of bread that God gives us before any Sabbath or holiday. So it's still a holiday, even though it represents some tough times, but it's still a holiday. So we take the 2.5 matzahs, we put them back on the plate, and soon we'll eat some of them. So we turn now to the main course of the evening, and I know what you're thinking, the fish, the chicken. It's the story. The story. We tell stories. And the night of Passover is the glue between all the generations. And to have continuity, you have to sit around a table with different generations. So the whole family was commanded to take that lamb from Egypt, right? And consume the whole lamb. And designate each piece of the lamb to an individual to make sure it's fully consumed. But that is the idea of coming together as a family. Actually, the Jewish law, the whole system of Jewish law is called a set table. Our system is called set table because without having, at the end of the day, a table that you can sit around with family and friends, life is not worth it. That's what at least God is telling us. Because if we don't have that communion with each other and with God, God says, I don't want to create this world. I'll destroy this world. And in Noah's time, when people were cruel to each other, God said, okay, that was not the purpose of creating this world. I'll destroy it. So this is the message of this. So now on page 9, we ask, it's really one big question with 4 answers. But the big question is, why is this night different from all other nights? And those who know how to sing it, there are people here, right? The Man Ishtana. Who knows the Man Ishtana here? To sing. All right, so I'll sing it, and you follow and sing together. It's Hebrew that says "Ma nishtana," but for Jews, it's a traditional tune of this line: "Ma nishtana." Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot, mikol halelot, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים חמץ ומצה, חמץ ומצה. הלילה זה כולו מצה, הלילה זה כולו מצה, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים שעה ירקות, שעה ירקות. הלילה זה כולו מרור, הלילה זה כולו מרור. שבכל הלילות אין אנו מטבילין אפילו פעם אחת, אפילו פעם אחת. הלילה זה שתי פעמים, הלילה זה שתי פעמים. And the last one, שבכל הלילות אנו אוכלים בין יושבין ובין מסובין, בין יושבין ובין מסובין. הלילה זה כולנו מסובין, הלילה זה כולנו מסובין. Why is this night different from all other nights? All other nights we may eat either bread or matzah, but on this night only matzah. All other nights we may eat any species of greens, but this night only bitter herbs. All other nights we do not dip even once, but on this night twice. All other nights we eat and drink either sitting or reclining, but on this night all of us are reclining. So it's beautiful, and it sets us with the idea. We're not going to go through all the readings because it really is about. I'm going to summarize it for you. Come in. And we leave the door open for Elijah. And where is Elijah's chair? Oh, Elijah's chair tonight is an office chair. And do you know why it's an office chair? Because we know that when Elijah comes back, he's going to be busy. Elijah comes back to every covenant of the Jewish people. There are few covenants. Of course, you know the circumcision, that's a covenant, the covenant of circumcision. There's a covenant of the Sabbath. Sabbath is a covenant. But also the covenant that we had with God leaving Egypt. So if you look at page 11, when it says it that, I'm going to summarize with Elijah first. Elijah said to God when he was chased by Ahab and Jezebel. When a prophet tells you, you're not doing a good job, right? But when you're the king, what happens? Of course, you approve? No. You chase the person. So he was chased away, and he complained to God that the Jewish people, the Israelites, are not fulfilling the covenants, whatever it is. So God said to him, listen, just like I told Moses, my greatest prophet, you're wonderful. You walk on water. But still, my people are my cherished people. Am Segula in Hebrew, the chosen people, that was translated as chosen people. Am Segula in Hebrew means literally, a treasure. Somebody who I care for very much, and I will personally look to make sure they're, they walk with me, so to speak. So God told Elijah now that he has to come back every time that the Jewish people are celebrating any covenant. He has to be there to be a witness. So Elijah, we know, didn't die, right? He went up to heaven on a chariot, and he comes back every time. So that's his chair, and we keep the door open for Elijah and for other great guests. So the beginning of the story on page 11 begins with "We were slaves," and we've covered this page, I think. So we can continue with page. We'll skip a little bit ahead to page 18. To page 18.
If I could just add something here. Gadi was talking more about the story and the repetition of the story. Now, from what we know, the early Christians, when they got together to celebrate the Sabbath, a couple of things happened. First of all, they would come together and always hear the story of the institution of the Eucharist and the Passion of Jesus. That was the center. In fact, when the Gospels were formed, they formed the nucleus of all of the Gospels, like those stories. Also, storytelling. We have to remember that the New Testament is made up of religious stories. These stories were told by the writers of the New Testament to fit the needs, of their individual communities. That's why we have certain discrepancies, all right? Pretty much everything comes together in terms of meaning, but there are discrepancies. Why? Because these are religious stories. This is the story of Jesus as told to a Jewish community by Matthew, a Greek community by Luke, and so on and so forth. Mark was writing to a Roman community. So the stories are going to be slightly different. That's why we find certain discrepancies in the New Testament. But when they came together, very interesting, if you want to read what happens sometimes at the Eucharistic meal among first Christians, read 1 Corinthians 11. Paul is telling the story. He's warning these people because they were coming to this meal drunk. Okay, so when it came time to break bread and celebrate the Christian Eucharist, they were all over the lot. And Paul tells them, hey, stop it. All right? And so again, we have all of those things that come into play in the early Christian community. But remember, the Eucharist and the Passion of Christ was always center in the storytelling. That's why we even have slightly different stories about the Passion. All right? The different communities being told by different evangelists.
So also, we are, right now, you brought up this point I like to make in the mission, that there were three issues that happened, because what the early Christians did at the Eucharist was do a Seder meal. They had a real meal. So we didn't get to the blessing of the bread yet. We didn't bless the bread yet. We blessed a cup of wine. But in a few moments we'll bless the bread, and then we're going to finish the ritual meal. Then we finish another cup of wine. Then we begin the regular meal. That's when we're going to go outside and have the regular meal. We'll come back. And then there's the third cup. And that's where Jesus would have said, this is the cup of my blood. Now watch how long it's going to be. When we do the bread first, it's going to be time. It's going to pass. And then he says, at the end of the meal, he took the cup. That's the key right there at the end of the meal. So it was indeed the ritual meal that we're doing now, and then the regular meal. People had to eat. It was a time of gathering, fellowship, being together. But 3 issues emerged. Number 1, there's 4 cups of wine. And people did get a little tipsy. All right? So Paul is castigating them, saying, hey, why don't you save this for home? Number 2, the rich and the poor. So the rich would come with all kinds of good stuff. The folks, the rich, the poor, maybe a cracker or 2. And of course, they probably shared some, but it was a division in the community. And then, of course, the ultimate would be the problem, is that Gentiles began to come into the community. Jews were there first, and they were keeping kosher. So the Christians came in, or the Gentiles came in with ham and cheese sandwiches. And grossed out the Jews. And said, what are you doing? You can't bring that in. You can't do that. So there was another source of division. So it seems that the church evolved pretty quickly. Let's just do the bread and the wine. And we'll remember the Seder. We'll tell our new stories, and we're sharing the Exodus story now a little bit. We'll get into that. But there's always the remembering. I always love to use that word. When Jews speak of this word to remember, they're reconnecting, just like we remember Jesus at the Mass. So I like to use the image. There's no word in English. We say, do this in memory of me, in remembrance of me. It sounds like you remember George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. They're nice guys. Oh, they do good things. No, it's deeper than that. So it's remember. Here's my member. God forbid it gets cut off. I want to remember it. That's the power of the word, to remember. So Jews are connecting when they're saying, this is the night we left Egypt. And the kids look and say, what are you talking about? We live in Bensonhurst. What are you talking about? What Egypt? I've never been to Egypt. But we remember the event. We reconnect it. We connect to it. And we put it back. We're in communion again with that event. So that's what's happening as we go through this ritual meal, then the regular meal, and we finish.
Okay, so story is, as we said, the glue that keeps communities together. And actually, I did skip, there was one thing I did want to cover on page 10, and then we'll go back on the English side is 11, page 11. And it's exactly in continuation to what Don and Father Roy said. If you look at it in the middle of the page, it said, bless the omnipotent, blessed be over giver of the law to the people Israel. So the omnipotent, he's the one that gave the Torah, the law, to Israel, right? And then it says right after that, which is seen to be almost misplaced, but right after that God gave the Jewish people the Torah, it says the law, that Torah, speaks distinctly of the 4 different sorts of children. Okay, so there's, again, number 4, so the 4 types of children, which are the 4 types of individuals. It says, again, and we can all have those 4 in some combination: the wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one who does not know how to ask or inquire. So the idea of those 4 children, there's we'll see what they ask, what each one asks, but the idea is that think of 4 generations, and the idea of remembering is the essence, right? Because it's our story, it's who we are, and the memory is who we are. So the idea of 4 generations that have to inform each other all the time, otherwise they'll forget. You'll get to a generation that will not know how to ask in Bensonhurst, right? So they'll say, this is not my story. And then unfortunately something happens in the world and you understand that it is your story whether you want it or not. So this is, and then you remember, so, but the point is to continue to be on guard with this, or informed. So the first generation, think of 4 generations of immigrants from Italy. Right? How many Italians? I don't know. Is it okay to ask that question or not?
Fairly Italian.
You know, Dr. Don Russo was the head of the president of the Italian American Club on the North Fork. So, anything Italian, go to Dr. Don Russo. So,
Watch yourself.
so think of the first generation that was born in Italy, and then they came over to America, and they sit with their children. So the first generation is the wise generation. They still have the information, and they still see themselves as part of their parents' story, even though they came from somewhere else, right? I mean, my parents' story is that they, at 5 and 7, walked through the Arabian desert for a year. So, I mean, this kind of definitely was not my story when I was growing up in Israel, in a very nice place, and, you know, far from me. But then I immigrated to America. And then I realized there's a desert of other sort to cross. So this is, it's everybody's story, and we have to respect our elders who are telling us wise stories. So I'll read it, you can follow. What does the wise child ask? What are these testimonies, statutes, and judgments that the eternal, our God, has commanded you? You will respond by instructing the child in the laws of Passover, teaching that after the Paschal lamb is eaten, there is to be no dessert. But in Hebrew, it's translated for Bensonhurst. And what it means is that at the end, you'll have to eat the afikomen. Remember the afikomen? The matzah? The taste you have to have is the matzah when you leave this room. Why? The matzah is the bread of humility. That's what it's called. The word humility and poverty in Hebrew is the same word. You choose. I go with humility, not poverty. Not that poverty is not part of it. Maybe it is. But the point is, it's not poverty. We don't preach for poverty. The Torah, the Jewish people, we do not preach for poverty. It's the opposite, actually. We promote private enterprise because we understand, I guess, our wise ancestors understood that for something to be really taken care of, you have to feel personally engaged in it. So. Okay, so let's go back to the wise. We'll get to the matzah when we break it. We'll continue the story of the matzah. But you have to eat the matzah last. So this child, the wise child, why is he wise? Let's not answer this question yet. Let's go to the next paragraph. Let's read the wicked child, or whatever they called him. Oh, they did translate wicked child. What does the wicked child ask? What does the service mean to you? By the word "you," it is clear the questioning child is not self-inclusive and has and so has withdrawn from the community. Okay, it is therefore proper to respond forcefully. This is done because of what the Eternal did for me when I went out of Egypt. For me, and not for the youngster. For had the child, and you can flip the page. And the child been there would not have been redemption for this one. That child would not have been redeemed. So we think of a mass exodus from Egypt, right? But do you know what the percentage of Israelites that actually left Egypt? We have a raffle here, so maybe you want to... what is you just throw a number.
1/3.
What is it?
1/3.
1/3, I heard. Okay, anybody else? like an auction?
5.
Fifth. Why do you say fifth? Because you know. The Talmud says, when the Torah tells that they went out armed, the word armed in Hebrew is the same word as 5, and they gathered and only 20% left. Whether it's exactly 20% or not, some opinions are actually saying maybe 500 or every 500 person or 5,000. So very small percentage of the Israelites that were enslaved in Egypt actually left. So that child, the wicked, so to speak, child, and again, I love what one of my rabbis said, the real wicked child is not even around the table. That one didn't show up. So it's a wicked in the sense that the way he's asking the question, he or she, of course, but the idea is that they don't see the story as linking to them anymore. They know the story, they know the stuff, but they don't see themselves connected. So it's already a step right away. Then the third child on the top of page 13. What does the simple child ask? What is this? You will say, with the mighty hand did the Eternal bring us out of Egypt from the house of slavery. Because the simple child is asking a simple question. What is it? Right? Now, it's a simple question, very nice, and the answer thus is also simple, but it means also that simple child is already once removed again. Because he is not even quoting, like the wicked child, some of the legality of things.
Let me just interject here, okay. Go back to the idea of the Italians that just came off the boat. Okay, that's the first generation. The next generation grows up in America. I want to do disco. I don't want to do the tarantella. I don't like that no more. I want to do disco. So that's the next generation. The third generation doesn't even know so much of the two generations, the two prior, okay? And then we're going to get to the fourth generation who doesn't even know how to ask. They're not in the conversation anymore. They have nothing Italian left in them. And this is what we see sometimes in a lot of people, in families and lots of places where the generations lose something unless it's brought to fore in every generation. That's the miracle of Judaism. That they have done this for 3,000 years, doing this ritual to help people to remember. And of course, people fall off, people discount and don't want to hear it, and don't show up. So that's it.
I'm staying out of Bensonhurst, by the way. But
There's Italians there too.
just in terms of our own lives, you don't have to worry about Italians or Jews or... Think of your Thanksgiving celebrations. How many of the kids, I don't want to go hear those same stories all over again. Uncle Joe's always drunk. All right? The same stories over and over and over. Well, begin to see what's happening. The original stories brought the family together, and over a period of time, the young ones don't even want to hear the story anymore. Because they get bored. They don't understand how their own identity is connected to story. And that's the other thing that we have to remember as Christians. Our identity is connected to the story of Jesus. Okay? Identity. Identity is so important. And the more individualistic we become, believe it or not, the less our identity.
Okay, so that's the story, and it's really important to tell the story of how the three of us got here. And that is because of that fourth child. We're doing this now for 18 years, voluntarily, because of that fourth child, and I'll explain. The first time Father Roy asked me to conduct the model Seder, I was working in business, but I was a graduate student at Yeshiva University. And he said, we don't know how many to plan. I told you I was fearful in the beginning, but I showed up, and we planned for 25 people. We didn't know how many people would show up. We planned for 25 people.
College kids.
The what?
College kids.
The college kids and some of the shrine people. So exactly 25 people showed up. So I was already thinking, I was a little less nervous. But then something happened that caused me not to just continue with this, but I quit my job 2 years into it, in our program, and went to rabbinical school, and then got my congregation in Greenport. So all this process was because of that fourth child in the Haggadah. What happened was, in that evening, I was sitting at the head of the table, and there were 25 people, 12 on each side, and one person who was sitting opposite to me in that long table. And we were reading as I do at home. I told Father, I don't know what you want me to do, but I can do what I do at home. And he said, exactly what I want you to do. So we read around the table. That's how we do at home. This paragraph of the child that could not ask or did not know how to ask, in our translation it was could not ask, it got to the person that was sitting again on the other side of the table, just in front of me. And he couldn't ask. He was pointing to his throat. You want to introduce Mike?
Yeah. So Mike had just had a laryngectomy. So he was sitting there going, and he couldn't ask. Gadi didn't understand what was happening. I said, look, he just had a laryngectomy. This just happened. And it felt to him, it was so strange, just one of those little God moments where this is cool. Wow, something's bigger here. And so he couldn't ask. So a lot of our young people, a lot of different people, maybe they're old people and they still don't know how to ask. And they're old people, like, what's this about? Why did you all come here tonight? What are we looking for? What are we searching for? So you're asking, that's why you're here. You're asking. And in a lot of ways, we'd like to point out in Project Genesis, it's the work of Project Genesis to introduce Christians, mostly Catholics, but all Christians, to the Jewish roots. And then we understand better, and then have this real fellowship and communion between the two crowds. Thank God we can do that these days. So it's not so separate. So it's been an amazing thing, but on so many levels, but we get a few of them here at the Seder. So when Mike couldn't ask, I realized this could not be just another coincidence. And there's something here. After the Seder, we went to Israel on our first pilgrimage together, the Jewish Christian pilgrimage. And then we came back, people asked us to start teaching together. And we didn't know where to start. We said, let's start at the beginning, Genesis, because we agreed on the text. So we started Project Genesis. It took us 7 years to teach the book of Genesis. So I realized through that time of 7 years, standing in front of Catholics and teaching Torah, what I know, what I took for granted, that is accessible to me. I realized they are the fourth child. The church, of course, with the history of Jewish people, and we didn't have the greatest history together. And so we tried to find our separate identities. And there were things that Christians did that was a Jewish practice. But once Christians started practicing it, the Jews stopped. Because we really wanted to separate. Fast forward 2,000 years, 1965. Dr. Don Russo was ordained in Rome during Second Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council was the council that, I'm sure you're familiar with some of the stuff that, and maybe Don can elaborate on it, but this is why we're here, because the Catholic Church, we, like in Hebrew the term, did tshuva in a sense on all the real terrible history that we had that culminated in maybe some part of the Holocaust. And
So the church decided that it needs to take a step and include the Jewish people and made peace through the Nostra Aetate, made peace with other religions, and especially with the Jewish religion, to say, we don't blame you anymore for killing Jesus. We don't personally hold you responsible, Jews that live today. And that did a big, big difference. But this was the beginning of the change, that this is why we're here. So 1965, it's going to be 60 years in 2025. 30 years of dialogue. That began 3 decades of dialogue between congregations, between clergy. It opened the door to at least start talking. 30 years later, 3 decades later, the pilgrimages started, interfaith pilgrimages started to the Holy Land. So we were one of the first ones to actually start this idea of also traveling together to the Holy Land. And I've written about this extensively, and I'm happy to share it. So we have 3 generations here that it's a process, and who knows who will be the next, maybe the 4th generation, and we're actually, it's interesting, we're exactly 15 years apart from each other. So it's literally 3 generations that that hand that was extended for peace by the Catholic Church in 1965, then cascaded to Father Roy, who already practiced the changes that were made in Second Vatican Council. One of them, of course, being prone to interfaith and to positive about this. So, and then here I am too, engaged in this, and who knows, we do need the next generation. So I see that there are young people here, and if you know other people who want to be engaged in what we do, please refer them. Finally, let's go to page 18, as we said, and we'll start eating soon. I can't imagine Moses in the desert with the Israelites. When do we eat? On page 19, the 10 plagues. This is, of course, the mechanism or the process that God showed the Egyptians His power and the Israelites as well. So what we do when we get to this part, we take our finger or something, and every time we mention a plague, we dip our finger in the wine and we kind of put it on the plate to reduce from the happiness of the wine. Why? Because, and this is very interesting, and it's pertaining to wars in different places and times in the world, that even though you win the war or you are justified wars, but still you have a lot of people that are die because of that. So we want to acknowledge that too, that wars are cause a lot of people to die.
Yeah, basically, the idea here is we're going to dip into the wine, and we're reducing the wine, reducing the happiness, because a lot of people did die during the plagues, and all war is a deficiency. The human race is less because of all this stuff. So we diminish the wine, and we kind of waste it. So you take a drop out and you dip it on your plate as we go through the 10 plagues.
Yeah. Okay. So let's read it together. I'll read it in Hebrew and then in English. So the first one is dam, blood. You take the finger, and we usually say blood, frogs, lice, wild beasts, pestilence, boils, hail, low of the firstborn. Okay. One thing before we make our first sandwich. The process, a lot of time, we don't appreciate, as we said, the Seder has 15 steps. It's a 15-step program. So you can't jump from step 1 to 15. And you need to be patient and appreciate every step. The wisest man in the whole Bible, King Solomon, he said something about, in the book of Ecclesiastes, he tells us, and he had everything. He said, I had everything. I was a king in Judah. I'm wealthy. I have all these wives, everything a human being wants. He said to us, who is a happy person? Who is a happy person? Is someone who enjoys the work of his labor. Someone who enjoys the process. And that is really what we're going to mention here, because part of moving from slavery to freedom is being thankful. Do not take everything for granted. When you're a slave, everything is provided for you. You don't have freedom, but everything is sustaining you. So you don't think for yourself, and you don't appreciate these things. So on page 21, we say, and this is a song, Dayenu. Dayenu, it would have been enough. If you just did this little bit for us, it would have been enough. Now think of your husbands and wives. Do they say Dayenu? Okay, there's a joke. I hope that you'll get the Jewish joke here a little bit. It's a waiter at Hadassah luncheon. You know the Hadassah, the women of Hadassah. And you come to the waiter comes to the table of the women of Hadassah. It's a Jewish organization, women organization. He does a lot of amazing things in the world. Hadassah, Hospital in Jerusalem is part of their work. But the waiter comes to the table and he said, "Is anything okay?" So, again, it's a joke. I don't want Hadassah on my... But this is what we want, to tell God, we appreciate every step you take. Now, this is, of course, we have not arrived at mindset yet. We do tend to complain, but this is at least where we want to be. So, page 29, and what was, 31. 21. Jumping. Page 21, and it's a little song, Dayenu, and it'll be easy for you to remember. We'll read each line, and you'll sing. Dayenu, 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 Dayenu. So if we do it for every sentence, it'll take a long time. So let's just do it every about 5. If God had brought us out of Egypt and had not inflicted judgment upon the Egyptian, it would have been sufficient. Dayenu. If God had inflicted justice on them and had not executed judgment against their gods, it would have been sufficient. Dayenu. Just say Dayenu. If God had executed judgment against their gods and had not slaughtered their firstborn, it would have been sufficient. Dayenu. If God had slaughtered their firstborn and had not turned their wealth over to us, it would have been sufficient. If God had given us their wealth and had not divided the sea for us, it would have been sufficient. if God had divided the sea for us and had not made us pass through on dry land, it would have been sufficient. If God had made us pass through its midst while keeping us on dry land and had not drowned our oppressors in the sea, it would have been sufficient. If God had drowned our oppressors in it and had not supplied our necessities in the wilderness during 40 years, it would have been sufficient. If God supplied our necessities in the wilderness during 40 years and had not fed us with manna, it would have been sufficient. If God had fed us with manna and had not given us the Sabbath, it would have been sufficient. If God had given us the Sabbath and had not brought us to Mount Sinai, it would have been sufficient. If God had brought us near to Mount Sinai and had not given us the law, it would have been sufficient. And the last two on page 23, if God had given us the law and had not led us into the land of Israel, it would have been sufficient. And last one, if God had led us into the land of Israel and had not built the temple, it would have been sufficient. Dayenu, 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 dayenu. It will be sufficient. Okay, now we're going to start eating, and I hope it will be sufficient as we go. You can take the matzah, and we'll come back to the explanation of what each one is doing. So, page 26, we lift the second cup. Okay, and you can maybe add a few drops to the first cup if you want. And we say, so this is the second cup of wine. And we say, blessed are you, our God, monarch of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. So, I coined a new phrase. So now we are ready. So the wine, it's almost like a bookend that separates between the parts of the Seder, the order. So now the next step is rachatza, washing the hands again. So try to do this again into that plate, and this time we're going to say the blessing. We say the blessing this time because it's all on the bread, and it's we start our meal. So what I would ask you to do is take the matzah, and you lift the 2.5 matzahs. Did you wash the... Now that we washed our hands, we say the blessing. Blessed are you, God, monarch of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandment and commanded us to wash our hands. But in Hebrew, it's not washing, it's netilah. As we said, elevate our hands. And now we're ready to partake, just like the priests in the temple. They couldn't partake the matzah until they washed themselves, right? So also remember that all the offerings in the temple were brought with matzah, not with leavened bread. Because we said, is it the bread of humility? And we'll talk about it more once you start eating, because I do not want to stand between you and the matzah. So let's lift the matzah, and we say, what? The 2.5. I mean, you can, one person can lift it, but if you want to lift your own personal matzah, it's okay too. Yeah, any matzah. And we say, blessed are you, God, our God, monarch of the universe, who brings bread from the earth. And in the second one, we say, on this only one time, only this time a year, we bless it twice. And we said, blessed are you, our God, monarch of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandment and commanded us to eat matzah. So if you are now like the child in the experiment that they leave them alone in the room and they're saying, if you don't eat this for 10 minutes, you get two. So if you haven't eaten yet, this is a good reward. So why do we bless it twice? One is because it's bread, it's still bread, type of bread, and then the second, it's the commandment of eating a matzah on this day.
And also, too, the wording of that prayer, I hope it's familiar to folks who go to Mass. So it says, blessed are you, Lord God, the monarch of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. It's very similar. That is called the Barakah prayer at the Mass. Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, for through your goodness you have given us bread. It become for us the bread of life.
Thank you. Now, we take the bitter herb, so we have horseradish on the plate. You can also eat the lettuce, either lettuce or horseradish. And now you can also put it on the matzah if you want. You can eat it with the matzah. But if you really are a stickler, you would eat it by itself right now. So take either horseradish or maybe a lettuce. And we do the blessing on the bitter earth, and we say, blessed are you, God, monarch of the universe, who has sanctified us with your commandment, commanding us to eat bitter herbs. Now, we make the first wrap in the world, the first sandwich. That was, that's how they ate in ancient times. The matzah in ancient times, and actually in my family, the matzah, you couldn't distinguish it from a pita. It's soft, it bends, but it just didn't rise. It takes 18 minutes for the dough to rise. So the matzah has to be cooked fully within 18 minutes. From the minute you finish working the dough until it's all cooked.
That'll make you cry.
The horseradish will make you cry and identify with the slaves. So on top of page 28, we put together all of the above. So in order to commemorate the Holy Temple, Hillel, during the existence of the temple, took unleavened bread and bitter herbs. So now you take the matzah, put bitter herbs, either the lettuce or the horseradish or both, and ate them together in order to fulfill the rules with matzah and bitter herbs, so you eat them. So, of course, we would have had the Paschal lamb too, because it's the Paschal lamb that we're supposed to eat with the matzah and the bitter herbs. But because we don't have the temple today, we can't have the sacrifice, the offering. So make a sandwich for yourself, and you can add on the plate, on the Seder plate, there is a the charoset looks like apple with nuts.
Yeah, we want to thank Lynn for about all day, her and husband. Thank you very much. We have boiled eggs by Sue and Margie did the eggs. So do you know the egg salad?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can make an egg salad sandwich. You can open up your egg. If you're not going to just leave it, we'll collect it later. I'll hide it for Easter.
Okay. And the next is the meal. So we can now start the process of eating. You can eat the eggs. So the egg tonight is really representing the Paschal lamb, because we don't have the meat to put there. But it also represents the cycle of life, the circle of life. That you come from slavery and you come out of it to life, from darkness to light. Of course, we both believe the ultimate miracle of God is the resurrection. So we believe in Tchiyat HaMeitim, the rise of the dead, as well. Okay, so how about we do each table?
Okay, after the ritual meal, we do have plates outside with the, we'll do a buffet service in a few minutes. So make yourself an egg sandwich with the matzah and with the haroset, the beautiful apples that were prepared. That also represents the mortar that the Israelites had to make to build all those, to make the bricks, to build the cities. So that represents the mortar that they would have to make it, to make the bricks.
Okay, while you're eating, we have a little surprise here. It's part of the story, actually, of what the hand of God did with us for 18 years here. One of our dearest students, people, friends, Richard Dachau, he and his wife Linda have been with us from the beginning, when we taught Patrogenesis at the shrine. Richard was passed away a few months ago, and he was a therapist and also very involved in the interfaith world and relationship. And one of his best friends is Robert Goldman, who is he leads the group of Jewish lawyers of Suffolk County, and he also is a therapist himself. And Richard and him were very good friends. And one day, Richard, because of anti-Semitism that he felt that is increasing, he wanted to offer. He suggested to do a yarmulke day, that people would wear a yarmulke. So at the funeral, at Richard's funeral, I had just landed from Israel, literally to his funeral, And I'm sitting, I was asked to give a eulogy too, and I was sitting on the tabernacle,
Sanctuary.
the sanctuary, and all of a sudden I see all the priests coming wearing yarmulkes. I was shocked. I didn't know anything about this. So, turns out that Richard was very serious about that. And then I asked Robert to introduce this Richard Challenge today. And he'll come forward and he'll introduce it and tell you a little bit more about it. But today, I found the stash of yarmulkes as I was leaving. Literally, somebody left it in front. What?
To come here.
To come here.
Yeah.
To come here. The yarmulkes were left in front of the synagogue a while ago, and the synagogue has plenty of yarmulkes, and I have plenty of yarmulkes. So I just set it aside, and I said, well, the next event that I go to, I'll bring it. And I opened the door to back my car, and I see these yarmulkes, and here they are.
Thank you, Rabbi. So, Richard was more than just my friend, he was my angel. The word in Hebrew means messenger, translated from angel to messenger. So in Hebrew, what is it?
Malach.
Malach means messenger in English. And Richard was my messenger my whole life. I was a psychologist, and I sort of followed him along the way. Where I worked in the jail, he was there before me. I worked for probation, he was there before me. But he was always there for me. And when Richard got sick, I was so happy that we still spoke. And Richard was very familiar with my organization, which Rabbi Gadi had spoken to, that in the Jewish religion, we believe that we're here in this world to heal it, to fix it. Well, Tikkun Long Island is a non-for-profit that I had started that Richard was always so supportive of. So Richard was still so sick, but continued on no matter what. He sent me a text on November 3rd of 2023, and he passed away at the end of December. His last text to me was, Robert, would your organization in English to heal the world declare a National Yarmulke Day, where yarmulkes would be distributed to people of all faiths to wear on a specific Friday to show solidarity with the Jewish people, our I Am Spartacus moment. So, since October 7th, it's been very, very hard as a Jewish person. We have felt more alone in this world than ever. I speak not just for myself, but for my friends. And Richard knew intuitively how I was feeling. So when I went to the wake, I got the opportunity to share this story. And I was so moved that Father Roy said, if you give me some yarmulkes, we'll wear it at Richard's funeral. And Linda Dachau, who's here today, said, give me a yarmulke. She sent me a picture the next morning with Richard wearing a yarmulke in his coffin. And as Rabbi Gadi said, when I came, I was leaving with my wife. I was taking all the bar mitzvah yarmulkes Jews collect as we go. And I'm like, let me take them. Perhaps, they'll remember. Well, not only did he remember, but Father Roy came over to me and he said, did you bring the yarmulkes? One thing similar about Jews and Christians, funerals always start on time. So I wanted to be there on time. He came to me and he said, did you bring the yarmulkes? Within that moment, shortly thereafter, I saw everyone, the priests, come out wearing yarmulkes. This was a healing moment for me, because you're looking at a boy who's now a man, who was called a Jew bastard, a kike, in my own public school, and felt very much outside, alone. But what you did to me, what you showed me, and what Richard inspired me, and is still my angel, and still my messenger, and more powerful now than he was before, is that being here today and needing your support is so important. So I just want to thank you, Rabbi Gadi, because, you know, the Jewish Lawyers Association was born out of October 7th, and if anybody's a lawyer or interested in becoming one, we take Jews and non-Jews, because we are not alone. And your presence today proves that. And Richard's challenge, which was to wear a yarmulke, we want to make sure that happens. That if everyone could declare a national yarmulke day on a Friday to show solidarity, we would feel so grateful. But we're so grateful that you're here and included and invited. And Linda, Richard lives with me every day. Every time I do a deed of kindness, I say, this is for you, Richard. And I urge you to do the same. Thank you. We're just passing out the yarmulkes.
If you want to wear it tonight, we were going to do it in the beginning, but
And in this egalitarian period, it is proper for women to wear a yarmulke if they like. Okay, so women can wear a yarmulke, so it's fine if you want to wear one yourself.
we're at the dinner.
Now, it wouldn't be a Catholic event or a Jewish event if we didn't mention there is envelopes on the tables. And we are always needing help. We don't get paid at all. In fact, this costs us some money to do this. And so I don't know if we're going to make any money even on this dinner at all, the way it's going. But we would like donations, and people would love to do a monthly thing, or all that kind of stuff. It's all in that envelope. We'll have a basket here too that we can collect what you'd like to leave tonight. That would be wonderful. Whatever it can be. I don't know if we're going to do 50-50. Would you like to do 50-50 tickets before the end of the night? I'll do it. We have $100 in the raffle so far, so it's a $100 prize at least, and it's $5 a ticket or 3 for $10. And Dr. Don will go around, I'll go around a little bit too. We'll get some tickets, and at the end of the night, we'll be able to see who the winner is, okay?
But more importantly, if you want to help in other ways, you have a skill, we people over online to support. If you want to give us an hour of your time a week or a month, that would be good. Okay, so you're going to direct.
Yeah. Okay, one more thing too. On the little envelope is a place for your email, and we could put you on our email list that comes. We send out all kinds of little invites to different events that we have here and there. Then I really want to go back to Israel. I wasn't able to make it last year. I was in surgery, and I would like to go with a small group, maybe of 9 people, sometime in the summer. If you're at all interested, love to get your name and email, and we'll be in contact. And maybe we can go to Israel at some point in the near future. Okay. So what we'll do now is begin to serve. We'll start with Linda's table over there if you want to go out. Now, what we have to do is bust your plates. You're really finished with what you have. Save your fork and the knife. That's real. All right, save that. We have to return them. We rented them. But if somebody can kind of bust the first plate, and there's a trash can over here, and in the back in the corner, and over here on the side, you can pick up the plates, and we'll call the tables as we do. Okay, wait. The table gets called. Yeah.
a strong hand, and then took us to the desert, gave us the manna, and then gave us, of course, the Torah, and we have to thank Him for that. So the way we thank is in the blessing after the meal, and in a few minutes when people sit down, we'll read a few paragraphs of that. It begins, it's called the grace after meal, and actually the grace after meal, that's why it's also part of this order, because you don't want people to eat and leave and run, right? Because then they miss that most important part of being in communion with God, thanking God, and the relationship. So the Hallel, anybody heard about the great Hallel? Right? The 6 Psalms, 113 to 118. And this is the Hallel, the Psalm 113 to 118. And these are the 6 Psalms that Jesus and His disciples also sang on the way to the Gethsemane. I'll let Father Roy explain it. I'm just going to finish the idea of thanking God after the meal. There was a Seinfeld episode a few years back, and he treated that subject. He said, I don't understand it. They give you the bill when you're now satiated. You're already full. You don't want to pay now. So I think that's why the Christian grace is longer before. Right? But we have to wait until the end. And when everybody wants to run out, we have to sit and thank God. So the grace after meal is the only commandment in the Bible, in the Hebrew Bible, that commands us to pray to God. There is no other commandment to pray to God. We pray because people did it, and Abraham sacrificed, and we were offering to God. But an actual prayer, this is the only time we are commanded to pray to God. The text of the prayer is not given to us, but we are commanded to eat, to be satiated, and then to bless God. So if you did the two first one, you ate, you're full, and now we have to thank God. So I'll let Father explain the Hallel, and then we'll say the
Again, we gave you thanks and praise. So now we're about to bless the third cup, and that's where Jesus broke the order of the Seder. The Seder, the order got broken. It was shocking. Jesus did a lot of stuff during the Seder that wasn't normal. All right, he said, this is my body, when he blessed the bread. Then during the Seder meal, at the time of Jesus, they would have eaten the lamb. Okay? It's an obligation to eat the lamb, to eat the matzah, and to drink the wine. You must do those three things to complete the Passover obligation. So you would eat the lamb during the meal. Okay, we would have had lamb tonight. But ever since, now it was interesting, another funny story, I was leading the first Seder at the shrine the second year. So the first year we did the thing at the university. The second time I did a Seder at the shrine. So I was in charge of the menu. So I had the ladies in the shrine there, they made lamb. It was wonderful, it was great. We had all this lamb all over the place. Rabbi comes in and goes, why do you have lamb? I said, it's in the book. That's what it says, it's lamb. That's what they do at Passover. But because the temple has fallen, 40 years after Jesus, the temple was destroyed by the Romans, the lamb fell out of practice. Because you can't sacrifice the lamb any place else than the temple. So the lamb was eliminated now as a sign of just saying, okay, we're moving on. We don't have a temple, and we're not going to do the lamb, but we will have a shank bone. Now, unfortunately, the oven inside didn't do the it wasn't working. I was planning on it working. I was going to put a chicken wing on everybody's table. I didn't get there. If anyone wants some chicken wings to go home with, I'll be happy to share. So now, remember, it's been an hour at least since the beginning to now, and now we're at the end of the meal. So at this point, after the third cup is shared and blessed, then they go out into the night. It says in the gospel, they went out into the night singing psalms, singing songs. That's called the Great Hillel, Psalms 113 to 118. If you're practicing Catholic, Christian, or whatever, on Holy Thursday night, that would be a beautiful thing to do, is to pray those psalms when they do the procession to the altar of reservation. Read 113 to 118 and think that this is the last thing the apostles said in some prayer, the prayer they prayed together, singing a psalm, before the arrest. So this would be the last thing they remember, and it's amazing when you read those psalms. Just imagine this is the apostles. Now Jesus knew his angle, and the apostles are wondering, like, where are we going? What's next? What's happening? So of course that continues with the arrest and all the rest. Now he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane. A lot of people don't know the meaning of that Hebrew word. It means the olive press. So the Mount of Olives, at the bottom of the Mount of Olives is Gethsemane, the olive press. So they would take the olives from all the Mount of Olives, take them down to bring them to the press. At that place is where Jesus prayed for the hour. Now I also always have to say, everybody's here. We've had 3 glasses of wine almost now. We're about to do the third. Peter, and I really feel sympathy so much now for the gospel story where we hear Peter, James, and John. They're in the garden with Jesus, and what happens? They fall asleep. They've had 3 cups of wine. So they fell asleep. So I do have a little sympathy for them. But the point is also now the 4th cup doesn't take place. We'll talk about that in a few moments.
Okay, so the Grace After meal is on page 29. And we say on the bottom paragraph, blessed are you, O eternal monarch of the universe, who feeds the whole world with your goodness and with grace, kindness, and mercy, gives food to every creature out of enduring eternal mercy, and as divine abundance goodness has never been missing for us, so we never ever lack food for the sake of God's great name, because this is God who feeds and sustains all and deals kindly with all, and provides food for all the creatures of God's creation. Blessed are you, eternal, who gives food to all. And then we'll go to the last paragraph on page 33, and it's a beautiful, page 35. And it is a beautiful paragraph that tells us that God never deserts us, even during, I was going to say during dessert, but let's read it together. It says, be in awe of the eternal, you saints, because there is nothing lacking for those who revere God. The young lions may do without and suffer hunger, but they who seek God will not lack anything. Praise the Eternal, who is good, whose mercy endures forever. You open your hand and satisfy the desire of every living thing. Blessed is the person who will trust in the Eternal, because the Eternal will return the trust. I have been young, and now I have aged, yet I have not seen the righteous person forsaken, nor the person's children begging bread. May the Eternal give strength to God's people. May the Eternal bless God's people with grace. And then we take the last hour, the third cup, and that's the end of the Grace After meal. And we drink it, and we say, Blessed are you, our God, monarch of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. And then,
Now, okay. Another point here. Now, remember the beginning, first blessing on the bread there. Jesus would have said, here, this is my body. An hour and a half has gone by. This is my blood. At the end of the meal, he took the cup. Again, he gave you thanks and praise. He took the cup and said, this is the cup of the new covenant, the cup of my blood. An hour and a half or so has transpired. What does this ritually mean as you watch that? Here's your body, and then here's your blood. Separation of the body and the blood incurs death. So ritually that is taking place. Ritually that's taking place at the Seder. So now the cup is given, and then they go out into the night singing psalms. So what was ritually performed at the Seder meal is about to take place in history, the next day.
okay, we'll do just one psalm I want to show you on page 39. And this is when it says here, Eternal, save us now, we beg you. Eternal, save us now, we beg you. Eternal, send us prosperity now, we beg you. Eternal, send us prosperity now, we beg you. In Hebrew, the word is Hoshiana, Hosanna, right? So you know it from Hosanna. So we actually, on Sukkot, on the Feast of Booths, we shake the lulav, the branch, the date, the palm tree branch. And actually, you know what? I will share this with you because this is so important. I got in 2016, because of our work together, I was invited to participate in the Palm Sunday Mass with the Pope in Rome. And I was sitting like 2 rows from there was the Pope, the Archbishop, the Cardinals, and your friend here. And but then it's just amazing. It's a full circle from Second Vatican Council, and here I am sitting with the Pope. I mean, it's unbelievable. So with God, everything is possible. So Hosanna, this is where Hosanna comes from, and the shaking of the palm branch. My theory is that maybe that did happen during the story in the New Testament, maybe happened during Sukkot, actually, the Feast of Booth, and later on was moved to Easter. I don't know. This is something.
So the other idea that has been coming to me here, I was asking, he said when he heard the Palm Sunday story, he says, palm branches, Hosanna. We do that in the fall. Why is that being celebrated in the spring at Passover? And I said, well, here you go. Here's another idea. Here comes Jesus on a donkey, and there's a prophecy in Zechariah that the Messiah will ride a donkey. You learn how to ride the donkey. The Messiah will teach us how to ride our physicality. The donkey represents Adamah. Adamah is earth, earthiness. So the donkey represents your earthiness. So God created earthiness as beautiful and good. He doesn't, but the problem comes when the donkey rides us. Okay, that's, some people say the monkey on the back or whatever expression. Egypt, the monkey on the back. We have the donkey ride us. That's not the way it's supposed to be. So the Messiah comes to riding the donkey. I will teach you how to ride the donkey and take your donkey into eternity. Take your body, your bodiliness. So we're spirit and matter, with physical and material, physical and spiritual. And now Jesus is coming down the Mount of Olives on the donkey. And the people know this Jewish liturgy. They know what it means to shake the palm branches, because you're calling out to God, Hosanna, Rabbah, Hosanna, Rabbah, save us, O highest one. So that's what it means, Hosanna in the highest. In the highest is a title for God. Save us, O highest one. But it's not a good translation because it's not apparent. Hosanna in the highest. So we say Hosanna Rabbah in Hebrew, that's the Hebrew way. Hosanna Rabbah, Hosanna in the highest. Save us, O highest one. And they're shaking the branches to show God, yo, I'm here. Yo, save me over here. But in this moment, it seems, the folks who were there was able to see Jesus as the answer. Here he is. So now I can throw the branches down. And then he comes into Jerusalem now and says, okay, here we go. Here we go. Obviously, some Jews got it, some Jews didn't. Okay, here we are, 2,000 years later. But that's part of the story. I find that very powerful. That, shaking of the branches, it's a cry to God, help us, save us. But now here, for Christians, of course, he is the Messiah. He is the answer. He's going to lead this next part of the journey.
Okay, are we ready for conclusion with the fourth cup? Let's, on page 45, we raise the fourth cup. And
Okay, it's time.
wow, it's 9 o'clock. Just a few minutes. We are wrapping up. And this is something also that Father Roy has a nice teaching about, and which I didn't know the first time we did the Seder. And I said, the 15th step of that 15-step program is literally to say it is finished. So I guess it resonates with Christians here, right? You see, Jesus said, it is finished.
So
So it's not finished?
no, not yet. So, okay, good. So the question, though, has always been, Scott Hahn brings it up in a lot of his books, that as a Protestant Christian, he couldn't understand when Jesus said, it is finished from the cross. It wasn't finished, his life was finished, but redemption, full redemption hadn't happened, the resurrection hadn't happened, so it's not finished. Okay.
I think that's a hint.
That's a hint too, finish on. So anyway, so when we were at one of our big Seder, we had 120 people there that week, and he was wrapping it up and trying to say to people, okay, you've been so patient, it's wonderful, it's a long night, you learned a lot, I hope, you were here, it's wonderful, thank you. But who gets to say, it's finished? Well, the whole room said, Jesus! And he looks at me and goes, why did they say that? How did they know? What's the cue? And of course, in the scripture, it says, the last thing Jesus says is it's finished. So he was completing the Seder. He was completing the Passover. Okay, so that's what that means there. So on the cross, he gets that fourth cup of wine in the sponge. And he takes that last sip. Then he says, it's finished. So the fourth cup is the finish. And there's still more to come. Don't leave yet.
My turn.
Yeah, this is it. You got it.
I just want to leave you with a picture. I think we all know we're celebrating the Seder tonight. But in the Christian tradition, it's the 3 days that are most important. As old Blue Eyes said, you can't have one without the other. So this whole idea of Holy Week is the saga and the story of a lover. I mean, if Jesus did not love us, then it would be meaningless. So if I can leave you with this thought, and it struck me this year particularly, gardens are for lovers. Jesus began his passion and ended his passion in a garden. He suffered in the Garden of Gethsemane. He was laid to rest in a garden. He was first experienced by Mary Magdalene, who hugged him in a garden. And I can just hear him say to Mary, don't hold on, I got a lot more loving to do. So as we go through tonight, please remember it's only part of the great story of redemption for Christians this week. And remember, it was a lover who died for us.
Okay, so coming full circle, we say at the top of page 47, we can say together, the commemoration service of the Passover has now been accomplished according to its order. All the laws and rules of the feast, as we have been considered worthy and prepared it, now grant also that we may be worthy to complete it. You, most holy, who dwells on high, raise up your inward able people, hasten and conduct us with joyful singing to the plant of your redeemed vineyard in Zion. And then every year, we say, L'shana haba b'Yerushalayim, next year, may we be in Jerusalem. And we do go to Israel on a pilgrimage every year, with the situation, of course, now, and COVID before just changed a little bit our schedule, but we do go usually in February, this year probably November, if you want to take a trip with us to the Holy Land. And I want to just conclude with a couple of sentences. Just like you teach, anything you teach, you have to tell your students, this is what we're going to do, then we do it, and then you have to say, this is what we've done. Right? So I just want to complete this. So we started by saying, and this is what Don said now also, that it's a story about God loving his people. It's a relationship. There was an article in the New York Times by Rabbi Shai Held, who is a conservative rabbi, one of my colleagues, and the title is Judaism is a Religion of the Heart. And of course it's also by extension Christianity. When we think about rational laws and order and commandment, it's all great, and we need it for the order of the body. But if the body doesn't have the heart pumping and being warm, we have not accomplished our mission, right? Being kind to people. We were oppressed. People oppressed us and really depressed us. And now we're coming out of it. And the reason we're coming out of it is because we know somebody loves us. And I'll give you what the Talmud tells us, that the Talmud is the Jewish oral tradition, that the reason that the men who were slaves in Egypt did not totally give up on their spirit. They were down 40 to the 49th level of impurity. 49, if they would have gone one more step down to the 50th, they would have been lost. Just like the 80% that did not leave Egypt. They died in the darkness. So the reason that they kept going, it said that their wives used to meet them, bring them the lunch, and show them how they loved them, that they're loved. Don't forget that. And this is the situation that we have to remind ourselves all the time, that God loves us, and the only way to become really free is with God and community. The two sides of the Ten Commandments. One side talks about the relationship between God and man, and the other side talks about the relationship between people. And it's incomplete if we don't have all of them. We live in a serious time. And I think when we started this 18 years ago, it was really just kind of a fun thing, and we're teaching, and it's nice. But I think that we live in a time that this is actually very important, that we come together and we support each other. And really, we believe in many of the same things. And of course, we share the same text. But ultimately, and I'll finish with that, ultimately, we all believe, Jews and Christians, that ultimately it's about the resurrection of the dead. It's coming back to life. And this is why the Torah tells us to celebrate Passover in the spring. And this year is a leap year in the Jewish calendar, which means that we add another full month, a lunar month, and every couple of years we have to catch up to the solar calendar. But the Torah tells us this is your beginning, this is your first month on your calendar, and it has to be in the spring. Why the spring? Because the spring is the best example for the rise of the dead. When you look at trees in the winter, and there's nothing on the tree, and then all of a sudden, something starts sprouting. And this is the whole thing here, is to really acknowledge the resurrection, that with trauma and everything else, we keep going. And this is the secret to the survival of the Jewish people, and I think, again, by extension, the Christian community. We die and we rise. Amen. Thank you so much for everybody.
Okay, it's not finished yet. Because
It's an Irish goodbye.
hello, this is the Epicomon. Okay, the Epicomon. So now you find it, the kids find it, the kid who brings it back to the table gets a prize, but find it, okay? And so this, as for Catholic Christians especially, this is something very beautiful the way I first heard it, when he explained what this is about. So here comes the matzah that was lost and wrapped in a linen, now has reappeared. And so now the last thing that we do is take a piece of the matzah and you put it on your tongue so that you have this food for the journey home. For the journey home. So Catholics have this practice called viaticum, the last Holy Communion. And so I recommend, a lot of people haven't done it, and because whatever reasons and all the rest of it, but I want viaticum. If I'm on my dying deathbed, I want somebody to bring me Holy Communion, and even if it's a fragment, put it under the lip of the person who's dying. It's not going to kill them. Like, what are you trying to say? They're dying. So put it underneath their lip. It'll dissipate, just a fragment. They're not going to choke again. But that's the last communion. It's food for the journey home. And that's what we believe is, Catholic Christians, it's food for the journey. So the last thing we do on the Seder is everybody takes a piece from the table, the leader, whoever broke the bread before, now passes it out to everybody. So the last thing you do as you eat is for the journey home. So thank you all for coming out tonight.